In the grand, often brutal tapestry of American history, there are stories of rebellion, of courage against impossible odds. We often hear about Nat Turner or the Emma, but have you ever heard of the Creole? This is the story of the most successful slave revolt in U.S. history, a tale that shook the foundations of the nation and involved a man whose bravery changed the course of 135 lives forever. Our story begins in the fall of 1841. The American brig, the Creole, was a vessel designed for the domestic slave trade. It departed from Richmond, Virginia, its hold filled with tobacco, and below deck, 135 enslaved men, women, and children. Their destination was New Orleans, the largest slave market in the country, where they were to be sold like cattle. The conditions were grim, the future even grimmer. The air was thick with despair. But among them was a man named Madison Washington. Washington wasn't just any man. He had a history of defiance. He had already escaped slavery once before, finding freedom in Canada. But his heart ached for his wife, still enslaved in Virginia. In a courageous but ultimately tragic attempt to rescue her, he returned south, only to be recaptured and sold. Now he found himself on the Creole, chained and bound to the horrors of the deep South sugar plantations. But Madison Washington was not a man to accept his fate. He was a leader, a strategist, and he was watching, waiting for his moment. He began to subtly identify other men who shared his burning desire for freedom. Among them was a man named Ben Blacksmith, another determined soul who would become his right-hand man. They communicated in hushed whispers, with knowing glances, forging a pact in the suffocating darkness of the ship's hold. They observed the crew's routines, the number of guards, their weapons, and the layout of the ship. A plan began to form, a desperate gamble for liberty. Washington knew the risks. Failure meant certain death, likely in the most brutal way imaginable. But the alternative, a life in chains, was a death of a different kind. On the evening of November 7, 1841, 9 days into their journey, the moment arrived. The seas were rough, and many of the crew were occupied. Washington, who had managed to conceal a tool, broke free from his irons. He moved silently, freeing Blacksmith and 17 other conspirators. Their target was the cabin where the crew's guns were stored. The element of surprise was everything. They burst onto the deck. The crew was caught completely off guard. A fierce, desperate struggle ensued. One of the slave traders, John Hewell, was killed in the chaos, and the ship's captain was severely wounded. But the rebels were disciplined. Washington took command, not as a tyrant, but as a liberator. He made it clear this was not about mindless revenge. It was about one thing and one thing only: freedom. With the crew subdued, Washington and his men were in control of the Creole. But their journey was far from over. They were in the middle of the Atlantic with no navigating experience. They had a choice to make. They couldn't return to America, and sailing to Africa was impossible. There was only one viable option: the British colonies in the Caribbean, where slavery had been abolished years earlier. They forced one of the crew members to navigate them towards the Bahamas. Imagine the atmosphere on that ship. The former captives were now in command, tasting freedom for the first time. The former masters were now the prisoners. For 2 days, the Creole sailed under this new command, a floating republic of the liberated, heading towards the promise of a new life. They arrived in Nassau Harbor, a port in the British-controlled Bahamas. The arrival of a ship controlled by former slaves caused an immediate sensation. The American consul in Nassau, a man named John Bacon, was outraged. He demanded that the ship and its human cargo be returned to the United States, arguing they were property and murderers. He wanted the rebels extradited to face trial for mutiny and murder. But the British authorities in Nassau saw things differently. Under British law, these people were not property. They were free individuals. The local population of Nassau, made up largely of formerly enslaved people and their descendants, rallied to the cause. They surrounded the Creole in small boats, a veritable flotilla of solidarity, ensuring that no one could force the newly freed people back onto the ship and into bondage. They chanted, they sang, they stood as a human shield. The British governor of the Bahamas ultimately made a decision that would send shockwaves across the Atlantic. He declared that all the enslaved people aboard the Creole who had not actively participated in the revolt were free to go. And what about Madison Washington and his 18 co-conspirators? The Americans demanded they be tried for murder, but the British government refused to extradite them. After a lengthy legal and diplomatic battle, they too were eventually released. Every single one of the 135 enslaved people who had boarded the Creole in Virginia found freedom in the Bahamas. They stepped onto British soil not as property, but as people. Madison Washington, the man who had escaped, returned for love, was recaptured, and then led a daring rebellion. Had succeeded. He had delivered his people to the promised land. The diplomatic fallout was immense. The Creole affair ignited a firestorm between the United States and Great Britain. Southern politicians were furious, viewing it as a direct threat to the institution of slavery. It strained relations for years and became a major international incident, highlighting the deep moral and legal chasm between the slaveholding United States and abolitionist Britain. Yet, despite its incredible success and international significance, the story of the Creole Revolt is often relegated to a footnote in history books, if it's mentioned at all. Why? Perhaps because its success was too potent, too inspiring. It was a story that slaveholders did not want told. It proved that enslaved people were not passive victims, but active agents in their own liberation, capable of brilliant strategy and immense courage. Madison Washington and the heroes of the Creole didn't just free themselves. They struck a powerful blow against the entire system of slavery. Their story is a testament to the indomitable human spirit and the unquenchable desire for freedom. It's a crucial piece of American history that deserves to be remembered, celebrated, and told. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as inspiring as I do, please hit that like button, subscribe for more hidden histories, and share this video to help us keep these important stories alive. We'll see you next time.